Back to the Daily Grind with the only free MMA channel that fucking matters, full-time MMA. And Barry Walters, shout out. This was another request by Barry Walters. He was said, what do you think about Nick Diaz saying that he believes Conor McGregor can land on Floyd Mayweather because he was able to land on Nate Diaz? And I didn't see this interview. This was an interview with Nick Diaz that was 14 minutes long. Wow, that's probably more interview time we've got with Nick Diaz this entire year. This one interview. Now, I haven't seen this entire interview yet. I do plan on watching it at some point in time. They say he talks about his USADA suspension and everything in here. So if I don't see the headlines where he talked about his USADA suspension, I'll watch this interview and get to that in a little bit. But for right now, let's get to what he had to say about Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather and his brother, because this was fucking honestly funny. Nick Diaz, oh my God. Nick Diaz, this is what he had to tell my MMA News. I feel like if he can hit my brother, he can probably put up somewhat of a fight with Floyd, if not bring him in an actual challenge. What? Let me repeat that again. When asked if Conor McGregor has a chance versus Floyd Mayweather, this is what Nick Diaz had to say. Listen close. I feel like if he can hit my brother, Nate Diaz, he can probably put up somewhat of a fight with Floyd Mayweather, if not bring him an actual challenge. What? Oh, I just got a shake on that one. What? He just compared Nate Diaz to Floyd Mayweather. That's what you gotta do if that's your brother, man. But you can't expect me to take this shit serious. I fucking love the Diaz brothers as far as I like their style. They smoke weed. You know, I've been a avid pot smoker for a while now. I quit recently, started back up when it was a celebration time. You know what the deal is, you've been following. But I'm quitting again. So, I mean, I've got no problem with the Diaz brothers. I don't feel like they're just pothead losers. No. I like the Diaz brothers. I feel like they were taken advantage of early in their career because they had to be for the simple fact that they didn't have managers. They just took whatever fight they could get, short notice, long notice, fight you here, fight you there, short notice opponent. They just did what they had to do in the beginning of their careers. And they started off training for food, essentially. Their coach told them, hey, if you guys want to come in here and get off the streets and train MMA, I'll buy you lunch. Oh, okay, yeah. Now, here's a fight in Japan. Let's take this fight. Hey, man, you can make $500 on your own. Whoa, wow, 500? Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to Japan. That's the type of fighters these guys were. They weren't able to pad their records. They don't have the best records, even though they are some of the best fighters in the world, and that's just the truth. You can say, oh, they've got over 10 losses. That doesn't matter. That doesn't take away from the fact that these are fighters, Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz. So a lot of people can talk stuff about them just because you're Team McGregor. When he says Nate Diaz's face droops to the left after the fight, and, you know, just because you're Team McGregor, you feel free to hate on the Diaz brothers. But at the same time, you got to put some respect on both of their names. Their record doesn't tell their true story. They're fighters. They have had a man on deck. They're not scared to fight anyone, anytime, anywhere. But at the same time, at this point in the career, they're going to take the smart fights. So they've both been inactive recently, but that's because they know their worth. They've learned their value. They're holding out for the biggest fights possible before the end of their career, because their career started earlier than a lot of people. Therefore, it'll probably end earlier than a lot of people's careers. And both of the Diaz brothers have a tendency of a susceptibility to being hit. They don't get hit all the time. They're very good boxers. So that's why when Nick Diaz compares Nate Diaz to Floyd Mayweather, I understand what he's saying. It's just a little bit of a reach. One more time before I get into it. I feel like if he can hit my brother, he can probably put up somewhat of a fight versus Floyd Mayweather, if not bring him an actual challenge. Now, what I'll say is, yes, Nate Diaz does have boxing skills better than most fighters in MMA. Nate Diaz is known as a boxing slash jiu-jitsu fighter. He's more known for his submissions in his boxing than he is for his kicks or his wrestling. So that is one of his specialties as far as Nate and Nick Diaz. They are very good at boxing and MMA. But Floyd Mayweather, we got to be real. 49-0, 49-1 after August 26th. But 49-0, man. He's the greatest boxer of all time, greatest defensive boxer of all time. Floyd Mayweather has made a name off of not getting hit. Nate Diaz has made a name recently off of getting hit, because even though he won his fight versus Conor McGregor, he was getting clipped up in the first round, dropped. Both fights he got dropped, and he was getting touched. So Nate Diaz said after the first fight, if I had a full camp, none of those punches would have touched me. You know, because of his boxing skills. He had faith in his boxing. And he didn't have as much faith in Conor McGregor's hands. Well, he got a full camp, and what happened? He lost. He got touched up a little more than he did in the first fight. His face was drooping to the left. It's a joke, bitches. His face, he looked damaged, and that's because these fighters have a lot of scar tissue on the face. So they do bust open easier than other fighters, as far as if you hit this guy with the half power punch, he's liable to bust open. That's where guys, they don't have as much scar tissue, so it's harder to bust them open. So if you're just going off of looks at the end of a fight, you would say the Diaz brothers lose a lot more of their fights just because they ended up getting busted up in some of their fights, especially Nate Diaz. But that's not always the case. They usually cardio, outland their opponents, outstrike their opponents, and they definitely have jiu-jitsu, so defensive and offensive. So you got to put some respect on the Diaz brothers' name. I've elaborated a little bit. This is actually more than I thought I was going to get out on this comment. I feel like if he can hit my brother, he can probably put up somewhat of a fight with Floyd, if not bring him an actual challenge. Now, I already said Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest defensive boxers. I think it's a bit of a reach comparing Nate Diaz to Floyd Mayweather. But with that being said, I'm still fucking Team MMA. So it's good to see Nick Diaz coming out and opening up and talking about everything going on in the Diaz brother world for a little bit. So I'm looking forward to watching this interview. But that's just what Nick Diaz had to say about Conor versus Floyd and comparing his brother to Floyd Mayweather damn near. Which is definitely a reach. But hey, it is what it is. That's your motherfucking brother. Of course you're going to come out here and pump up your brother, pick up your brother. That's what you're supposed to do. It is what it is, man. Let the haters know what the fuck you think about Nick Diaz's comments in the comments. Dude. I was sitting at a bar one day when two extremely large women walked in, and I overheard their conversation and noticed that they had an interesting accent, so I asked them, cool accent, ladies, are you two from Ireland? And one of them snarled at me, it's Wales, Dumbo. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. Alright, so are you two whales from Ireland? And that's about all I remember.